Hello. Today we are reading The Lesson by Toni, Cade, Bambara. We're just going to make some notes directly on our copy of the story. But the things we're going to highlight are going to be very useful for the paragraphs we're going to write in response to the story. And we're going to need to use good text evidence. Paragraph 1. What is Sylvia's assessment of Miss Moore at the beginning of the story? And how is this assessment borne out by the end of the story? So we're going to want to pay close attention to Miss Moore at the beginning. Versus what she does. We're also going to write a paragraph. Is the ending of the story optimistic or pessimistic? Write a paragraph and include text evidence to support your response. We'll talk about that one more when we get going. So let's go ahead and start. Back in the days when everyone was old and stupid or young and foolish, and me and Sugar were the only ones just right, this lady moved on our block with nappy hair and proper speech and no makeup. Real quick, back in the days, right? This is an older setting. The story was written in 1972, and yet even in 1972, this is an older setting. Just keep this in mind because the story is going to talk a little bit about money. So think about value of money. Very briefly, right? Me and Sugar were the only ones just right. This is our narrator. You can take her at face value as whether she is just right. And then this lady moved on our block with nappy hair and proper speech and no makeup. It's our first introduction. And quite naturally, we laughed at her. Laughed the way we did at the junk man, who went about his business like he was some big-time president, and his sorry-ass horse his secretary. And we kind of hated her, too. Hated the way we did the winos, who cluttered up our parks and pissed on our handball walls and stank up our hallways and stairs so you couldn't halfway play hide-and-seek without a goddamn gas mask. Miss Moore was her name. This is the lady, nappy hair and proper speech. The only woman on the block with no first name, and she was black as hell, except for her feet, which were fish white and spooky. And she was always planning these boring-ass things for us to do, us being my cousin, mostly, who lived on the block, because we all moved north at the same time, and to the same apartment, then spread out gradual to breathe. And our parents would yank our heads into some kind of shape and crisp up our clothes so we'd be presentable for travel with Miss Moore, who always looked like she was going to church, though she never did. Which is just one of the things the grown-ups talked about when they talked behind her back like a dog. But when she came calling with some sachet she'd sewed up, or some gingerbread she'd made, or some book, why then they'd all be too embarrassed to turn her down, and we'd get handed over all spruced up. She'd been to college, and said it was only right that she should take responsibility for the young one's education. And she not even related by marriage or blood. So they'd go for it, especially Aunt Gretchen. She was the main gopher in the family. You got some old dumb shit foolishness you want somebody to go for, you send for Aunt Gretchen. She'd been screwed into the go-along for so long, it's a blood-deep natural thing with her, which is how she got saddled with me and Sugar and Junior in the first place, while our mothers were in la-di-da apartment up the block, having a good old time. Just real quick, right? Notice everybody's trying to, back here in the middle of the paragraph, everybody wants to be is trying to impress Miss Moore and trying to impress their kids. And notice what Miss Moore does. She said it was only right that she should take responsibility for the young one's education. She is, quote unquote, educating. The narrator and Sugar and the others. All right, on to paragraph 2. So this one day, Miss Moore rounds us all up at the mailbox, and it's pretty hot, and she's knocking herself out about arithmetic. And school's supposed to let up in summer, I heard, but she don't never let up. And the starch in my pinafore scratching the shit out of me, I'm really hating this nappy-head bitch and her goddamn college degree. I'd much rather go to the pool, or to the show where it's cool. So me and Sugar leaning on the mailbox being surly, which is a Miss Moore word. And Flyboy checking out what everybody brought for lunch. And Fat Butt already wasting his peanut butter and jelly sandwich like the pig he is. And Junebug punching on Cutie's arm for potato chips. Before we march on, right? I love this. We're leaning on the mailbox being surly, which is a Miss Moore word. There is some influence going on here. Back to Junebug punching, and Rosie Giraffe shifting from one hip to the other, waiting for somebody to step on her foot or ask her if she's from Georgia so we can kick ass, preferably Mercedes. And Miss Moore asking us, do we know what money is, like we a bunch of retards. I mean real money, she say. Like it's only poker chips or Monopoly papers we lay on the grocer. So right away I'm tired of this and say so. And we would much rather snatch Sugar and go to the sunset and terrorize the West Indian kids and take their hair ribbons and their money too. And Miss Moore files that remark away for next week's lesson on brotherhood, I can tell. And finally I say we ought to get to the subway because it's cooler. And besides, we might meet some cute boys. Sugar done swiped her mama's lipstick, so we ready. Real quick, we're focusing on Miss Moore. Miss Moore asking us, do we know what money is? Real money. All right? Also notice the tone, right? This ongoing tone. Our narrator's tone is sarcastic. She's mouthy. She's surly. We also might have some sense of their age. Sugar done swiped her mama's lipstick, so we ready, right? So you know, how old is the narrator? Probably not a full-blown teenager. Probably not a really little kid though either. Paragraph 3. So we heading down the street and she's boring us silly about what things cost and what our parents make and how much goes for rent and how money ain't divided up right in this country. This is all political. It's political and economic. Concerned with money. And then she gets to the part about we all poor and live in the slums, which I don't feature. And I'm ready to speak on that, but she steps out in the street and hails 2 cabs, just like that. Then she hustles half the crew in with her and hands me a $5 bill and tells me to calculate 10% tip for the driver. And we're off. Me and Sugar and Junebug and Flyboy hanging out the window and hollering to everybody, putting lipstick on each other because Flyboy a faggot anyway, and making farts with our sweaty armpits. But I'm mostly trying to figure out how to spend this money. But they all fascinated with the meter ticking, and Junebug starts laying bets as to how much it'll read when Flyboy can't hold his breath no more. Then Sugar lays bets as to how much it'll be when we get there. So I'm stuck. Don't nobody want to go for my plan, which is to jump out at the next light and run off to the first barbecue we can find. Then the driver tells us to get the hell out because we there already. And the meter reads 85 cents. And I'm stalling to figure out the tip, and Sugar says, give him a dime. And I decide he don't need it bad as I do, so later for him. But then he tries to take off with Junebug foot still in the door, so we talk about his mama something ferocious. Then we check out that we on 5th Avenue, and everybody dressed up in stockings. One lady in a fur coat, hot as it is. White folks crazy. Said to pay attention to the money a little bit. Just real quick, some context. 85 cents on the taxi cab. You're not going anywhere nowadays with that kind of money. And pay attention to where we are. We are on 5th Avenue, talking about people walking around in fur coats. Remember, we just read James Baldwin's 5th Avenue Uptown. But now, this is 5th Avenue Downtown. And 5th Avenue Downtown is fancy. We're not talking about a poor neighborhood. We are talking about a rich, fancy neighborhood. Paragraph 4. This is the place, Miss Moore say, presenting it to us in a voice she uses at the museum. Let's look in the windows before we go in. Can we steal? Sugar asks very serious, like she's getting the ground rules squared away before she plays. I beg your pardon, says Miss Moore. We fall out. So she leads us around the windows of the toy store, and me and Sugar screaming, this is mine, that's mine, I gotta have that, that was made for me, I was born for that, till Big Butt drowns us out. Hey, I'm going to buy that there. That there? You don't even know what it is, stupid. I do so, you say, punching on Rosie Giraffe. It's a microscope. What you gonna do with a microscope, fool? Look at things? Like what, Ronald? Asked Miss Moore. And Big Butt ain't got the first notion. So here go Miss Moore gabbing about the thousands of bacteria in a drop of water, and the something or other in a speck of blood, and the 1,000,001 living things in the air around us is invisible to the naked eye. And what she say that for? Junebug go to town on that naked, and we rollin'. Then Miss Moore asked what it cost. So we all jam into the window smudging it up, and the price tag say $300. So then she asked how long it'd take for Big Butt and Junebug to save up their allowances. Too long, I say. Yeah, had Sugar. Outgrown it by that time. And Miss Moore say, no, you never outgrow learning instruments. Why, even medical students and interns and blah, blah, blah. And we ready to choke Big Butt for bringing it up in the first damn place. So notice two things. I get interested in how much it costs. $300. This microscope is pricey. Other thing, Miss Moore is telling some things. Junebug go to town on that naked. What do we got here? We've got a little bit perhaps of, I think it's fair to say we have some immaturity going on, right? She said naked. That sort of thing. Paragraph 12. This here costs $480, says Rosie Giraffe. So we pile up over her to see what she's pointing out. My eyes tell me it's a chunk of glass cracked with something heavy, and different color inks dripped into the splits, and the whole thing put into an oven or something. But for $480, it don't make sense. That's a paperweight made of semi-precious stones fused together under tremendous pressure, she explained slowly, with her hands doing the mining and all the factory work. So what's a paperweight? Asked Rosie Giraffe. To weigh paper with, dumbbell, say Flyboy, the wise man from the East. More that sarcasm. Not exactly, say Miss Moore, which is what she say when you warm or weigh off too. It's to weigh down paper so it won't scatter and make your desk untidy. So right away, me and Sugar curtsy to each other and then to Mercedes, who is more the tidy type. Just going to point this out to you, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about a $480 paperweight. I can give it a couple exclamation marks.
Destiny Love Henley. Destiny Love Henley. Please report to the 9th grade office. Destiny Love Henley reports to the 9th grade office. Thank you.
That is crazy talk expensive, right? Notice the joke at the very end, too. Miss Moore making assumptions about desks. Right away, me and Sugar curtsy, right? Acting formal. They're kind of hamming it up to make fun of Miss Moore. 17, sorry. We don't keep paper on top of the desk in my class, says Junebug, figuring Miss Moore crazy or lying one. At home, then, she'd say, don't you have a calendar and pencil case and a blotter and a letter opener on your desk at home where you do your homework? And she know damn well what our homes look like, 'cause she nosies around in them every chance she gets. I don't even have a desk, says Junebug. Do we? No, and I don't get no homework neither, says Big Butt. And I don't even have a home, say Flyboy like you do at school to keep the white folks off his back and sorry for him. Send this poor kid to camp posters is his specialty. I do, says Mercedes. I have a box of stationery on my desk and a picture of my cat. My godmother bought the stationery and the desk. There's a big rose on each sheet and the envelopes smell like roses. Who wants to know about your smelly-ass stationery? Say Rosie Giraffe before I can get my 2 cents in. It's important to have a work area all your own so that... Before we move on to the last bit, I just want to get back to this, right? This idea of desk, paper, homework. These things are foreign concepts to our narrator and these kids. These do not exist in their world, much like probably $480 paperweights. Now we're going to get to the big thing right here. 25. Will you look at this sailboat, please? Say Flyboy, cutting her off and pointing to the thing like it was his. So once again, we tumble all over each other to gaze at this magnificent thing in the toy store, which is just big enough to maybe sail 2 kittens across the pond if you strap them to the post tight. Doesn't sound very big. We all start reciting the price tag like we in assembly. Handcrafted sailboat of fiberglass at $1,195. Unbelievable, I hear myself say and am really stunned. I read it again for myself just in case the group recitation put me in a trance. Same thing. For some reason, this pisses me off. We look at Miss Moore and she looking at us, waiting for I don't know what. What is unbelievable? That we are talking about a $1,195 toy sailboat. Not only is it unbelievable, this pisses me off. Maybe there is a lesson here. 27. Who'd pay all that when you can buy a sailboat set for $0.25 pops, a tube of glue for $0.10, and a ball of string for 8 cents? Must have a motor and a whole lot else besides, I say. My sailboat cost me about 50 cents. So notice, a $1,195 toy sailboat versus a 50-cent sailboat. What do you think are some of the differences between the two? 28. But will it take water? Say Mercedes with her smart ass. Took mine to Alley Pond Park once, say Flyboy. String broke, lost it. Pity. Sailed mine in Central Park and it keeled over and sank. Had to ask my father for another $1. And you got the strap, laughed Big Butt. Jerk didn't even have a string on it. My old man wailed on his behind. Little QT was staring hard at the sailboat, and you could see he wanted it bad. But he too little, and somebody just take it from him. So what the hell? This boat for kids, Miss Moore? Parents silly to buy something like that just to get all broke up, says Rosie Giraffe. That much money should last forever, I figure. My father'd buy it for me if I wanted it. Your father my ass, say Rosie Giraffe, getting a chance to finally push Mercedes. Much must be rich people shop here, say QT. Yes, sir, I think you're right. You are a very bright boy, say Flyboy. What was your first clue? And he rap him on the head with the back of his knuckles, since QT the only one he could get away with. Though QT liable to come up behind you years later and get his licks in when you half expect it. What I want to know is, I says to Miss Moore, though I never talked to her, I wouldn't give the bitch that satisfaction, is how much a real boat costs. I figure 1,000 gets you a yacht any day. This relationship with Miss Moore, I would never talk to Miss Moore because I don't want to give her the satisfaction of me engaging with her. But what do we have here? we do have engagement between the narrator and Miss Moore. I figured 1,000 would get you a yacht any day. Why don't you check that out, she says, and report back to the group? Which really pains my ass. If you're going to mess up a perfectly good swim day, least you could do is have some answers. Let's go in, she say like she got something up her sleeve. Only she don't lead the way. So me and Sugar turn the corner to where the entrance is, but when we get there, I kind of hang back. Remember, they've been outside the whole time. They've been window browsing. They're only just now going into the store. Let's go in, she say, like she got something up her sleeve. Well, she don't lead the way. So me and Sugar turn the corner to where the entrance is. But when we get there, I kind of hang back. Not that I'm scared. What's there to be afraid of? Just a toy store. But I feel funny. Shame. What does she have to be ashamed of? And yet, this is the emotion she identifies. But what I got to be ashamed about? Got as much right to go in as anybody. But somehow I can't seem to get hold of the door. So I step away for Sugar to lead. But she hangs back too. And I look at her and she looks at me, and this is ridiculous. I mean, damn, I've never ever been shy about doing nothing or going nowhere. But then Mercedes steps up, and then Rosie Giraffe, and Big Butt crowd in behind and shove. And next thing, we all stuffed into the doorway with only Mercedes squeezing past us, smoothing out her jumper and walking right down the aisle. Then the rest of us tumble in like a glued-together jigsaw done all wrong. And people looking at us. Boom. Why are people looking at us? And it's like the time me and Sugar crashed into the Catholic Church on a dare. But once we got in there and everything so hushed and holy, and the candles and the bowing and the handkerchiefs on all the drooping heads, I just couldn't go through with the plan. Which was for me to run up to the altar and do a tap dance, while Sugar played the nose flute and messed around in the holy water. And Sugar kept giving me the elbow. Then later teased me so bad I tied her up in the shower and turned it on and locked her in. And she'd be there till this day if Aunt Gretchen hadn't finally figured I was lying about the boarder taking a shower. Same thing in the store. Notice this connection she's making. Same thing in the store. We all walking on tiptoe and hardly touching the games and puzzles and things. And I watched Miss Moore, who is steady watching us like she waiting for a sign. Like Mama Drury watches the sky and sniffs the air and takes note of just how much slant is in the bird formation. Then me and Sugar bumped smack into each other, so busy gazing at the toys, especially the sailboat. But we don't laugh and go into our fat lady bump stomach routine. We just stare at that price tag. Then Sugar run a finger over the whole boat. And I'm jealous and want to hit her. Maybe not her, but I sure want to punch somebody in the mouth. Look at this. This is huge. Not staring. These emotions that our narrator's trying to get her head around. What'd you bring us here for, Miss Moore? You sound angry, Sylvia. Are you mad about something? Giving me one of them grins like she's telling a grown-up joke that never turns out to be funny. And she's looking very closely at me, like maybe she planning to do my portrait from memory. I'm mad, but I won't give her that satisfaction. So I slouch around the store being very bored and say, let's go. You sound angry, Sylvia. Notice we finally get our narrator's name. Are you mad about something? And yes, I am. I'm mad, but I won't give her that satisfaction. The same thing our narrator told us back in paragraph 39. Her relationship with Miss Moore, the way they engage with each other. Me and Sugar at the back of the train, watching the tracks whizzing by large, then small, they're getting gobbled up in the dark. Notice, taxi there, train home. Interesting choice. I'm thinking about this tricky toy I saw in the store. A clown that somersaults on a bar, then does chin-ups just because you yank lightly at his leg. Cost $35. Always the money here. Cost $35. I could see me asking my mother for a $35 birthday clown. You want a who that costs what? She'd say, cocking her head to the side to get a better view of the hole in my head. $35 could buy new bunk beds for Junior and Gretchen's boy. $35 and the whole household could go visit Granddaddy Nelson in the country. $35 would pay for the rent and the piano bill too. Who are these people that spend that much for performing clowns and $1,000 for toy sailboats? Who are these people? Exclamation mark, question mark. This is outrage. Maybe we'll write that word, outrage. What kind of work they do and how they live and how come we ain't in on it? Where we are is who we are, Miss Moore always pointing out. But it don't necessarily have to be that way, she always adds, then waits for somebody to say that poor people have to wake up and demand their share of the pie, and don't none of us know what kind of pie she's talking about in the first damn place. But she ain't so smart, because I still got her $4 from the taxi, and she sure ain't getting it, messing up my day with this shit. Sugar nudges me in my pocket and winks. Back to this. Back to Miss Moore. Where we are is who we are, Miss Moore always pointing out. But it don't necessarily have to be that way. Back to them. Right? What are we getting here? We are getting a political, to remember the title of the story. Titles mean a lot. We're getting this political lesson. It's huge. All right, let's finish it up. Top of the last page. Miss Moore lined us up in front of the mailbox where we started from. Seemed like years ago. And I got a headache for thinking so hard. And we lean all over each other so we can hold up under the draggy-ass lecture she always finishes off with at the end, before we thank her for boring us to tears. But she just looks at us like she reading tea leaves. Finally, she say, "Well, what did you think of F.A.O. Schwartz?" Rosie Giraffe mumbles, "Why, folks crazy." "I'd like to go there again when I get my birthday money," says Mercedes. And we shove her out the pack so she has to lean on the mailbox by herself. "I'd like a shower. Tiring day," say Flyboy. Then Sugar surprises me by saying, "You know, Miss Moore, I don't think all of us here put together eat in a year what that sailboat costs." And Miss Moore lights up like somebody goosed her. "And," she say, urging Sugar on. Only I'm standing on her foot so she don't continue. This is revelatory. This is big asterisk. It. Imagine for a minute what kind of society it is in which some people can spend on a toy what it would cost to feed a family of 6 or 7. What do you think? This is Miss Moore, right? This is Miss Moore's deeper question. The abbreviated question is Q. It's her deeper question. "I think," says Sugar, pushing me off her feet like she never done before, "so I'd whip her ass in a minute. Now, this is not much of a democracy, if you ask me. Equal chance to pursue happiness means an equal crack at the dough, don't it?" Miss Moore is beside herself, and I am disgusted with Sugar's treachery. So I stand on her foot one more time to see if she'll shove me. She shuts up, and Miss Moore looks at me. Sorrowfully, I'm thinking. And something weird is going on. I can feel it in my chest. A couple things, right? Back to the lesson itself with this democracy. Interested in Sugar's treachery. Why do we have her treachery? Think about it. 43 and 39 and 43, right? Versus 39 and 43, where our narrator Sylvia won't give Miss Moore the satisfaction, and yet we also get this. Miss Moore looks at me sorrowfully, but I feel something weird in my chest. All the way finished now. Anybody else learn anything today? Looking dead at me. I walk away, and Sugar has to run to catch up and don't even seem to notice when I shrug her arm off my shoulder. Well, we got $4 anyway, she says. Uh-huh. We could go to Haskell's and get half a chocolate layer and then go to the Sunset and still have plenty of money for potato chips and ice cream sodas. Uh-huh. Race you to the Haskell's, she said. We start down the block, and she gets ahead, which is okay by me, because I'm going to the West End and then over to the Drive to think this day through. She can run if she wants to and even run faster. But ain't nobody gonna beat me at nothing. Gotta think this day through, but ain't nobody gonna beat me at nothing. Real quick, one of the last things for us to consider is whether this story ends, whether the ending is optimistic. Will things get better for Sylvia and presumably all of our other kids, all these kids to whom Miss Moore has given the lesson? Or is it a pessimistic ending? You know, will things be unchanged or get worse? Be or stay bad? A lot of tone in here. Ain't nobody gonna beat me at nothing. What are the different ways of keeping score? What game is she playing? Things to think about as you craft your response. Hope you enjoyed the story.